One. Hey, we're live. Hello and welcome to my first million dot live, a podcast channel where we talk to first time entrepreneurs from all over the world and learn from them how they build profitable businesses. And my guest today is gonna catch me because when I mention first time entrepreneur, my guest today is a second time entrepreneur. Is building his second company. But anyways, you were a first time entrepreneur at some point of time. So I'm very excited to have with me my guest Avinash Hirsch. He's the founder CEO of Weavr.ai, an organization that provides a knowledge exchange network that brings developers, tech professionals, and companies on the same platform. Avinash has had an accomplished career all through his life. He was the CEO of HelloSys that was acquired by Sonata Software. We'll ask him more details about while we are talking in the interview. With that, let's welcome Avinash. Avinash, welcome to my first million dot live podcast. How are you doing today?
Very good, and thanks, Ravi. It's great to see you finally in on a StreamYard.
On
I'll be
StreamYard,
excited
yes.
next week. Yeah,
So Avinash and I have known each other for a year or so. I
that's right.
was
That's when we connected.
yeah. I was doing some usability testing for Weavr, and that's how I have been familiar with Weavr and how it has evolved. So we'll talk all of that during the course of the interview. But Avinash, before we get into the meatier stuff, what would be a good context setter is to know a bit about you on what your background has been, and then we will get into the meatier stuff on your foray into entrepreneurship.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've been techie myself. I was trained as an engineer and came to US many years back, but I came here on a Labor Day weekend. So I've been laboring around for a while now. So that's my story for my friends, and all my family and friends know that. Having said that, I've been very, I would say, passionate about few things, and that is now coming into companies. I've been very passionate about knowledge in general. I think it's one of the few things in life that grows when you share, like other than just a few things out there. And I've been working on ideas. My first startup was a very small app, and then became HelloSys, and the third one is Weavr right now.
Did you? I mean, did you have a job at all in the US, or you started as
Yes,
an
yes,
entrepreneur
yes,
in the US?
absolutely. I worked with Cisco in between. I worked with a company called LTX, where I was a developer, and then I kind of grew a team out there.
Got it. But how did the entrepreneur bug bit you? What led you from a safe job of a developer, of a technical person, get into entrepreneurship?
Well, I think that is, I think Silicon Valley, the San Francisco Bay Area has to be blamed for that in some fashion. I think people around you here, I mean, they are always thinking about companies and startups, and I think it rubs you somewhere, right? And I was always in the solution mindset, right? Finding problems, finding some solutions. But I didn't realize that one can start a company and do that. But when you come to Bay Area, people around you are talking about that. You see friends doing that, and
Right.
somehow it rubs on you. So I was almost sort of pulled into it with these discussions going on,
Right.
and I played around with some mobile apps in those early days of iPhone. And that's when I started doing this.
But were you always entrepreneurial in terms of your mindset, like growing up years? Did you
I don't
have?
think so. I come from a very, I would say my dad is a doctor, my mom is a PhD, very academic focused. She has a PhD in Sanskrit and a master's in English literature. So, nothing to do with business, right?
Got
Nothing to do with business. And I grew up in that environment. But I think one thing was very clear that we were trying to be positive all the time. And, those are things that entrepreneurs really need, that you can build some grit, you can build some positivity.
Right.
So yeah, to answer that, no, didn't really come from a business background or any entrepreneurial background in general.
Got it. So tell me how. So did you chance upon an idea that you wanted to build into a business, or you wanted to build it into a business, and then you started looking out for fishing out for ideas? How did the idea for building that app come up?
Well, that was definitely a problem that we saw, for myself and for some of my friends. And we realized that we were just sending paper resumes to companies, and there were tons of them being sent. So we built an app called audio job interview. And the
Okay.
idea was very simple. You record your answers to questions that were pre-recorded so that you can show your passion in that, right? You are not just sending a paper resume. And
Right.
we didn't have much to show, 4 years of work and similar kind of work. So what else can you do other than showing your passion? And that came in top five in Apple, and that kind of kick-started the whole thing. And it's a 3 to 4 weeks of glory that you see, and that is when I think it really I realized that things could be done with a simple idea, and you can kind of make it out there.
Nice. So how did it? So I mean, apps are dime a dozen. Everybody is
That's
coming
right.
up with app. How did it scale? How did it reach? How did it become popular? How did it grow?
Yeah, so it's a lesson on its own. I mean, the entire app building to app launch to app success to app failure is a lesson on its own. But we made a good app. I think it was a recording that you would do. You would upload it on a server. We would give you a link that you can then take it to a LinkedIn or send it as a part of your resume. And
Right.
recruiters or engineering managers would click on that link, and our server would play that for them. Now it so happened that somebody from UC San Diego, right, a blogger, uh, found us and wrote about us. He interviewed me on a Thanksgiving weekend, saying, "I want to talk to you. I have a piece that I'm looking at for helping new graduates get into the job market, and they have nothing to show. I think they can show passion." So I gave an interview just like this, but not on a video. It was a phone call, and I think they published it out there, and it was tons of downloads that happened, and then it
Wow.
was a viral effect out there. We, unfortunately, we were new, just two people team. There was no AWS, by the way, and the downloads would just kill our servers sitting in my little room in there
Wow.
because all the upload was happening out there. So we did, but once that happens, Apple pushes you right up there, right? Once they start seeing downloads. So we went into top five, and after that our servers were crashing. So we were not, I would say, knowledgeable enough to be humble and say, hey, we are just two people, we can't handle this. Rather, we were kind of obfuscating the whole thing, saying, acting big and saying, hey, we are working on it, our team is looking at it.
Right.
And I think it kind of slides down after that.
Got it. Got it. And and so was it a paid app?
It was a paid app. We actually made some money on that, but
Uh,
yeah, that was one of the biggest disaster because we kept on increasing the price of the app so that we can avoid some downloads. We thought students might not want to download, so
wow.
we had a 99 cents to, at some point we made it $9.99,
Wow.
and I think that was a bad move, but you learn it.
Got it. Got it. And then you said that the app evolved into this company, HelloSys. Is that true?
No, no, I think the app was, then I went back to a job. It was a side gig. It
Got
was
it. Got
nothing. I focused on my what I was doing, and then mobile was definitely my passion. So, and while working in these companies, LTX, Cisco, I realized that companies were not taking the most advantage of mobile apps the way they should be. They were thinking of mobilizing a process, which was like an SAP or an Oracle,
it. Right.
but the world was trying to look at from a different direction, right? We were looking at videos, audios, and those were not even available in SAPs and Oracles of the world, like those kind of fields even. So we built a middleware. We call it a mobile backend as a service,
Right.
which would then connect to your Oracle, SAP, SharePoints of the world, and then open up a API or SDK at that point, which was iOS, Android, JavaScript. So people could build mobile first applications and think through use cases which were very, very specific to a mobile landscape, not like mobilizing a process in SAP.
But how did you zero in on this pain point? Like, because was this part of your existing businesses where you saw an opportunity?
Yes, I think everyone was trying to somehow look at mobile apps as, how do we really do something for field workers and all that stuff. And the solutions that we saw were like super clumsy. They were connecting to SAP. I mean, they were like multi-month projects to even implement.
Right.
Nothing very clear.
Right.
So we saw that opportunity right there. I knew mobile apps very well from a user perspective
Right.
because I built these apps.
Right.
And then we said it's not about the apps; it's actually how you build the apps, especially for these companies, which, I mean, you could see the consumer apps flying, but enterprise apps are all lull right now. So that's where we came in picture.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how did you go ahead and approach this? Like, did you start building it along with a customer or so? How did you, or did you create? Was the MVP culture, this lean development culture, was already? Which year are we talking about, by the way?
Sorry, come again. Can you repeat that last one?
Which year are we talking about?
We are talking about 2013,
2013, right?
2012, 2013. Yeah, 12,
Yeah.
13.
So Eric Ries was already popular. Lean development was already popular.
That's
So
right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, as I said, those were your inspirations in a way. And we actually bootstrapped it to a certain level. We
got
found two very large customers who were looking at mobile applications to be launched,
got it.
and they became our what we call the lighthouse customers, really big ones.
So
And so
So before customers, you'd want some test customers to test out your applications, right? Who are helping you build and give you
that's right.
feedback and validation. So where these customers, the early customers, the paying customers, were the ones who also help you with the testing.
They did. As a matter of fact, they were thinking of building it in house initially as a platform.
Right.
And somehow we got in touch with some manager who was trying to build. And then we were brought to the CIO level. And then they realized that we have quite a bit of knowledge in this industry, how we are thinking about it. I was deep into this, so I knew the major problems that people will face. So we had a clear idea of what we will be launching as the outcome. And initially, they thought there are 3, 4 people, we can probably hire them and just get the work done.
Right.
And we said, no, no, it's a small startup that we are building, and
Right.
it kind of flew in that way. We worked with them. We kind of did I would say, bending backwards in a way, saying that we will also help you build apps on it, not just the platform, because at the end of the day, it's a platform. You really need to see the outcome. And we knew that thing. I used to build apps. So we said, we'll build you apps. The first 2 apps will be built by us. So you see the proof to the pudding in here.
Right.
And so that is how we launched. And they truly helped us because I think one of the biggest challenges in an enterprise is how do you really know the nuances of security, connectivity, integrations, and everything.
Yes.
And so Sandisk and Equinix became our initial lighthouse customers.
So you were two people, right? How many
We
were
were,
you?
we were at that time we were five team members.
So help me understand, especially when you're building something for an enterprise customer, how do you gain trust for them to take a bet on you to try out something? So how do you get your foot in the door? How did you get your first customer, so to say? I mean, were they your friends from your network? How do you do that? Because that is the biggest challenge. Your first five
Yeah,
customers, especially when you are a nobody and you're
yeah.
doing something for the first time.
I tell you, knowledge sharing is always very helpful. So when you start sharing your knowledge in small little forums, saying that you know about this stuff deep down and the
Mhm.
problems, especially, people notice you, right? And that's what happened with HelloSys as well. I knew mobile apps, I knew the security issues, I knew the problems that companies would face.
Right.
So I started writing a bit, not as a blog or something. That time, it was more of an answering into small forums where people were asking questions about it.
Like
And
Quora?
it was not Quora actually. It was mostly on the Reddit side of the world,
Okay.
and those were kind of taken well. And when we got introduced, because I was in the Bay Area, I used to network a lot here, meet a lot of people, and when I talked about this, people knew that we know this stuff fairly well, not
Mhm.
just the backend SAP and all, which was already their forte, but how this can be converted into a solid mobile app, right? The entire end-to-end game.
Right.
So I think at some point people take a bet on saying, well, you know it, this stuff, come go prove it. I will give you some time. And that's what we did. We actually proposed them that give us 1.5 months, 45 days, we'll come back with something that is functional for you.
Nice. So these people were also at Reddit. Is that how it is?
I don't know how the Reddit, how they saw it, but we got calls at some point. So somebody saw the messages. Uh,
Got it.
how that finally came into somebody's attention, I'm not sure.
Got it. Okay. I'm,
And
I'm
we
just
couldn't
trying.
track it. We couldn't
Yeah, yeah.
track it as well.
No, the reason I'm asking you these questions is, I mean, if somebody is listening to it, mostly it becomes a challenge to get a foot in the door in enterprise space, especially. So I completely get it. So it's mostly inbound. You create a buzz in the relevant forums. You write, maybe you have a blog now or something of that sort, and then you generate more content awareness in the right forums.
Absolutely. And if you are doing something which is the world is moving towards, a lot of people want to seek that knowledge, right? They want
Mm,
to learn more. They want to say whether they are doing the right thing, are they taking the right next step. So
right,
they are looking for these answers somewhere, right? So
right,
you have an immediate attention to it. And
right.
I think it's kind of known very well now. For me, that time it was by chance, just playing around.
Got it. And was this a problem that was already being solved? How was the competition space at that time? Were you the only ones who were trying to build a platform for mobile apps for enterprise, or were there other players
No,
as
there were many of them actually thinking through. This was a major problem, right? So almost every large vendor like SAP
well? Right,
had a SAP mobile platform, right? So everyone was thinking how to build mobile apps out of their backend systems that they had, or whatever the enterprise systems they had. It's
right,
just that we took a different approach. We said it's a mobile first world. So you
right,
think from the use case, doesn't matter where the data comes from. So we kind of built a middleware
right,
um, in the cloud where you could simply connect to anything and we would show the data. And if that field was not there, for example, video, audio, you can
right.
create on our system
Got it.
and then generate a SDK for that.
Got it. Why don't you tell us the next stages of the growth after that? So you got your first few customers. What was the feedback like? Were you building along a, a few quarters along with them, or when did it come to a shape of a robust product?
Yeah, it took the platform took around, I would say, a good 12 months to say that that could be deployed to anyone else,
Right,
because and that too only with certain um, enterprise systems, right?
right,
We would connect to NetSuite, we would connect to SAP, but not for everything because we didn't have all the connectors.
right.
But I think that was a good start because then it was more about building integrations. We
Mm,
already knew that this is how people are using it. We had at some point we had around, I would say, seven Fortune companies using us as the base. But the problem with a platform like this is that it becomes core to some companies. And so there is always a
what
build what it becomes a
becomes?
core platform, right, for many
Okay,
companies. So
right,
they cannot really rely on a small startup
right.
to say that our entire mobile application portfolio is going to be on this platform.
Got
And
it.
that's the biggest problem that we faced. And
Right,
we partnered with a few companies to front end us on that. That was a good move because we could see the immediate change in the perception of a startup versus a larger company that was taking the ownership of saying, okay, we will build apps, we will manage this, we will do this. So we focused our attention on training them
right.
versus we doing the full thing. And it was very hard for us to, I would say, do the training for the customers. Rather, it was easier for these motivated folks to do that.
Got it. And were there multiple partners, or there was a single partner for
We had
for?
five at some point.
Got it.
Yeah, five partners.
Nice, because yeah, this is also very important, right? First of all, enterprise customers have a high bar.
That's right.
Security,
Yeah,
single sign-on, integrations. They have like a list of things which you, as a startup or a early startup, you won't be. It would be on a roadmap maybe in 2 years. So partnering with somebody who is already established is always the nice way to go about it.
absolutely a great one. And then it's a win-win for the partner as well because they are getting a technology and a foot in the door of new enterprise customers through our platform, right? So they have the rest of the business to work on. So it becomes a win-win. And as long as you can do the value prop right for a platform like this, it really helps to build that partnership model.
And how did you find your partners, by the way?
Well, we were lucky to have one of our mentors who was sort of expert at building these alliances and partnerships.
Hmm.
So he was the one who actually started telling us that you should build a model around it. You can't scale up as a small company until you do that. So he built those with us, guided us through. I mean,
Got
I've
it.
always been privileged or lucky to have some mentors around, and I seek them every time, actively seek them for different areas and reach out to them ad hoc. So I think it's a fantastic culture of mentorship that I've benefited from.
Could you double click a bit on that, please? Because uh, it seems like you have been lucky, and I know for sure young entrepreneurs who struggle with getting right mentorship, and if at all they get somebody, it's usually it's not it's a indirect favor that they would want a board seat or something of that sort. How does mentorship work for a newbie? How, what after all this experience, how would you give an advice to an early entrepreneur?
Well, I think a lot of that is serendipity, when you meet people. But the serendipity is about how do you increase the chance of that serendipity to happen, right? You go meet people, you talk about a little bit, learn about this, and where you connect sometime. I um, i feel like I was lucky in that I used to meet a lot of people, have fun, play sports over here, meet somebody who would connect with you, and voila, you realize, oh, this person has tremendous knowledge in this. And I would ask them very clearly, would you be my mentor? Right, I'm learning. And the thing is, the most times I have realized, if you ask that question in a genuine fashion, people are more than willing to really help you. It's just that you cannot go directly on cold with them. You got to have a little bit of a connect somewhere coming in.
Right,
That could be on, in a friend's place or in a party or somewhere.
right.
So, to the young folks who are getting into this, I would say mentorship is one of the best form of, I would say, success, growth and success that you can build without really thinking through a whole lot of your product, right? That because you can't really build that in you all the time. So you need team, and building a team is one thing. But I keep mentors as a part of my team, right? You kind of start thinking of the team as a part of, the mentors as a part of your team. There's a very nice book called E-Myth Revisited,
Yeah,
Entrepreneur Myth,
yeah.
and that kind of talks about how an entrepreneur starts with his own or his or her own strength and says, "Well, I'm going to do this," right? And then soon this person realizes that only 60% of the time is being spent on the strength that this person had. The
Yeah,
40 to 50% is being spent on other things.
right.
And one of the ways that most successful people have done is they have put a fictional org chart in front of them with
Mm,
their head, name and head on every function, I would say.
mm,
And according to E-Myth Revisited book, I think it's fantastic book. The best people then start working towards replacing that head to somebody else, right? Uh,
right.
you get the right person for that, which is a normal course of any startup. But if you also know, it's the market is so odd that you can't really do that very quickly. So what
Mm,
you do is you bring in mentors and advisors for those places where you can possibly work without having them full time with you, right? So that's the advice
mm,
that I would bring. So I definitely take that approach where partnership and alliances is not a full time job
right,
right now, and then we can have a mentor who can help us and guide us a bit, and then we do the grunt work.
right. So you were bootstrapped at that time when you were looking for mentors.
We were bootstrapped. We had one angel check, and we actually bootstrapped with this, and I would say with angel funded until the exit that we had. So
Okay,
we found an exit that was very interesting for us as a team, very small team, and we didn't really raise. We were looking at raising funds versus the offers that were coming in.
right. So, in the world of easy money today, where people are on tech crunch, even if they are raising, say, 100K, okay, I mean, because it's so much. Even in the VC side of things, they're under pressure, so they want to dispense money and fund as many as possible. So it's very easy. So, and what has replaced now, the mentorship has gone, because if the VC is already putting in money, they would help you with. They first of all, they have a board seat, they advise you, they give you a guidance. So do you think in this world is mentorship still relevant, or it is again a wasted it's just a distraction because your VC has got his intent to help you out?
Yeah, very still very relevant. The founders and the main leaders have the privilege to get hold of every VC, and you can request them to provide you with all the things that you need. But if you have a team that you are hiring, right, how would they get that mentorship? Right? So how would they grow or learn from others? It's not very easy to have a fast growing team and then relying on a VC network, because now you have to arrange it. And VCs are doing an incredible job, by the way. I've seen some really good things happening with the venture firms really putting their foot forward, but it's not a scalable model for a lot of companies when they are growing. And the demands are not just limited to very specific. And the timing is when you is most important, right? The right knowledge has to be at the right time, not wait for that. So that's where I think the mentorship model is still a very very big one.
But how do you you got lucky maybe, okay, you
I
met
did.
people, but how do you just go and fish for mentors? How do you incentivize? Because hey, even mentors are busy. If they are good, they must be in really good demand, right? A lot of people must be asking for their time. Do you give them stocks? Do you give them a seat on the board? How do you incentivize your mentor? Or am I asking the wrong question here?
No, no, absolutely right question. You're almost bringing me to our new platform approach that we are taking. I don't know. We haven't spoken about that, but uh, first to answer your question, I think the incentivization is based on the willingness of a mentor to really first of all get engaged with you. I think that is the hardest part, right? You can send LinkedIn DMs, you can send Twitter DMs, and a lot of these things happen through a DM right now.
Right.
Uh, and some people would agree, some people won't. So if you have the willingness to show that, willingness of a person to really help you, that's the step one, and that's the hardest part. After that, it's easy because then you are talking about what's the incentivization, or is it just giving back. But with Weavr Cafe that we are launching very soon, actually we are addressing this because, as I said, I've been fairly benefited with that. And the serendipity doesn't happen in the COVID world, unfortunately. You are
Right.
not going to parties, you're not meeting in pubs, you're not going to sports a whole lot with people. So it's become even more difficult. So what we are building in Weavr Cafe is a platform. It's called a knowledge sharing platform, where anyone, any professional can come and share their knowledge,
Right.
right? If you this is These are people who are willing to share their knowledge, right?
Right.
And they can do it in a one-on-one advisory mentorship format,
Right.
or they can do it in a group session like this. Which the biggest difference is that, unlike your if you see around you, right, there are a lot of people who have tons of knowledge that you would think, oh, if I had this friend talk to this friend of mine,
Right.
it's a perfect combination. And that knowledge is untapped because most of the time people don't have the zeal or the time to build courses and tutorials and one way traffic, right? What
Right.
we are building is something that is an interactive session like this, where I can come with my inherent knowledge and talk about it, answer questions on that. So Weaver Cafe is actually an attempt to do that. We have experts and we have mentors, and we are also leaving this to the mentors and the experts to decide on their time, whether they want to keep it free, whether they want to keep it paid, or they can also send a portion of their proceeds to a charity. They can support a cause. We are integrating with tons of nonprofits that they can then pick and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to charge, but I'm sending 75% of my proceeds to a charity like this. So,
Nice.
so we provide that as a platform. uh, we believe that there is a lot of wisdom around us, right? It's untapped because they are not going to build, uh, you know, courses, tutorials. You send a DM and then you don't know whether you hit this person. But we want to bring all these people who are willing to share their knowledge in some or the other fashion
Right.
onto our platform. So yeah, for anyone new, they should, especially in the tech industry that our current focus is, if they are learning something new or if they are growing in their career, whether they want to get into engineering leadership and things like those, that's a platform that is coming in.
We will talk about Weaver in some detail. Let's finish the story of Hellosis. So so why don't you? So you said you benefited from some of the mentors, and how did the growth happen? What was the business model, by the way? So you were building this platform for mobile applications. Were you charging on? Was it a perpetual license at that time, or subscription was already popular? How did it work?
Yeah, so we had a subscription model onto that, which was basically based on three parameters. One was the number of users. So if you have 1,000 users using apps, active users, there was a tier on that. So you had a sliding scale where you would have the number of users, the number of connectivities, like the integrations, whether it's Salesforce, SAP, Oracle, that you could pick up from, three to start with, and then you can extend. And the last one was about the number of API calls, because there is a possibility that there could be an app which is calling a million calls, right? So
Mm.
three parameters that we picked up, and that was a business model, right? We were charging based on that.
So you would calculate the business needs, number of API calls,
Mhm.
number of integrations, and you come up with a price for that
Yeah.
for a year. Was it an annual subscription?
Yeah, I mean that was mostly we try to do a quarterly because people wouldn't want to sign the annual one.
Right.
So initially, and then we a couple companies signed up the annual one, but most of them were doing a quarterly one. But the good thing about a business like that is once you start building on a platform like this, you're almost inside the system now, right? It's
Got it.
very difficult to replace you unless
Mm.
you have done something really wrong.
Got
So
it.
that was a good business model to get started
Right.
with the first year, and then you can keep growing on that.
Got it. And how was your revenue share with your partners that got you into this enterprise space?
Yeah, the revenue share was not very good for us, but we gave a very late, 30% was for them.
Right.
They So partners were not in the subscription business most of the time. They
Right.
were in the either in the consulting business or something else, right? So
Right.
they started a new revenue subscription model, which was very good for them. And
Right.
then they would charge for whatever it would take for building mobile apps on top of it. That was project based for them. So
Got
they
it.
would get benefited on getting a new subscription revenue as well as the money from the projects that they were getting to build
Got
apps. Yeah.
it. Got it. And okay, how long? So how did you scale this up? How many customers were you able to finally get into? Or
Yeah, at the
uh,
time of exit, we had 16 customers,
right.
some very large ones.
Right.
Mostly, that was a skewed model where four customers were pretty much our bread and butter. The rest
Right.
was a small money coming in,
Right.
and we were working towards how do we really make it better, raise more funds to do all sort of challenges that a startup has
Right.
at that point. But 16 was not directly managed by us; these were managed by partners as well.
Right. But what kind of pricing was this? I mean, what enterprises, of course, is a different price range. But are you comfortable with sharing the revenues or something of that sort?
I mean, the revenues in a subscription model are never that great, but yeah, at some companies we were reaching 75K for the annual
Mm.
things,
Ah, okay,
and
nice.
75 to 100 was our the first 4 or 5 companies that we were talking about.
Right. And you ran this for how many years, Avinash?
4.5 years, yeah.
I see. And then how did the exit happen? Were you looking for a buyer, or somebody found you attractive, or
Well, I think we were definitely looking for some way to bump our. We were bootstrapped with some angel checks, so it was becoming really hard. I would not recommend anyone to do that again. Uh, but and the
so
growth
you
was
you mean you were under pressure from angels to
no, no,
to
no, no. There was no pressure. It's just that the pressure was because we were, you know, sparingly paid. We could not grow. We could not hire more people. Right. So
right,
all sort of things that we needed, we could see the need, but we didn't have people. So we wanted to really go raise some funding.
right,
And I think the funding market was not as good as what we see today.
right,
And I think it was also a little bit of learning that was needed in raising the funds.
right,
And meanwhile, we were getting some offers from companies, one of
right,
them, very large company here.
mm,
And when that came in, we said, hey, are we ready for this? Why not? Kind of a thing. And if we didn't know what's going to be the offer.
right,
So we got multiple offers at that point.
right,
It was not an easy, decision making because of the type of companies that were coming to us.
right,
And the best one that came in was from Sonata because they told us that they were moving in the platformation space. That
right,
means platform as their entry point, and they were committed to building platforms. So had a lot of meetings with the folks out there. They seemed the most passionate about building a platform like this, growing a platform like this.
right,
When you have a company like this, which you have worked so hard, you almost feel like you don't want that to be wasted, or you want people who will care for that, right?
right.
And it seemed like they were the most passionate about. I like the team. I like the CEO. Shrikar Reddy is an amazing person. So just kind of a meeting of minds and meeting of, I would say, chemistry in general that happened.
Got
And
it.
we ran it as an independent subsidiary for, um, I mean, it was for 3 years.
Nice, nice. I have a couple of questions here. So, usually, Sonata is of course, a great company. So that must have been really, really good partnership there. So they were not there definitely for the customers, right? So they were only looking at the potential of
Both.
what you built, isn't it?
I think both, because the customers we had were marquee ones, right? You mean these
Ah,
are companies that you could expand your business in many, which has been which was a good one. We had couple patent pending at that point. That was were very interesting patents that could change the trajectory.
right.
And thirdly, about the technology that we built, because we could enable any company in like 10 days to start building and launching things, right?
I see.
Unlike other companies that would take 3 to 6 months
Right.
to build something like that. So the quick start was a great way. And as I said, Sonata was very clear on how they are approaching the next uh, wave of platformation.
Got it. So I have a question here. So how did you decide upon selling price for this? Usually they say that annual revenue into four times, right? That's how it is. I mean, that's a guideline.
Yeah, I mean that is when you have an exit like that, I think it's nothing to do with the revenue at times, right? It's more about the future potential of what could be done with the company. Again, I was very privileged with one of my mentor who is a lawyer who guided me through and said, don't think what you are, what you could be.
Could
and
be.
and I think that was true, because what you could be is what the pricing is based on, right? With that company.
Yeah, but how do you convince your buyer on what you could be? Is this an extrapolation that
Well,
you do?
if you have three offers, then you can convince them that if you don't think this is the right price, then we have another one.
Got it.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
is it public? Is it public knowledge about what the exit?
Yeah, I think it's in the news, because it's not as a public company.
Okay, so how much was the exit?
It was a 5 million cash
Ah,
offer.
nice, nice. And how many people were you at that time?
You're seven,
Ah,
seven
nice.
people. Yeah.
Nice. So usually, whenever there is a buy-in and then you go and work for the parent company, I have seen. So I have interviewed some of my friends who were in that setup. They're they're not very interested to continue because they're entrepreneurs. They want to build the next big thing. They do not want to be part of a larger organization, and they're always restless. So is there as part of that contract? Do you have to serve the buying company for a few years? Is that how it is usually? Because I've never understood that.
Yeah, mostly you will have some golden handcuffs onto this, which is your you have a contract that you sign, at least the founding team, because, and I think it's logical, because otherwise what you built cannot be just assimilated directly into the company. I definitely worked for more than just a contract. I think it's a fantastic company to be part of. So I really liked the team. I really liked how they were approaching. And today, Sonata is growing so fast. Thanks to the leadership and the approach that they've taken, the path they've taken.
Got it. You called it golden handcuffs. So that means, okay, that is, I learned something new today. So how long did you work, by the way, then?
I was there for 2.5 years, and then I was an advisor for another 8 to 10 months.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Great. And then so this is an interesting question that I often, and this is a challenge, right? So as an entrepreneur, you cannot help but think about your next venture. And at any given point of time, you have at least a dozen playing in your mind. And this is the question that I always ask, that there is the cost of opportunity, right? So which one should I pursue, and should I invest my next 5, 7, 10 years, maybe 20 years?
Yeah.
How do you pick a new idea where you want to invest your precious life of 5 to 10 years? What's your, do you have a rule of thumb, some principle?
Oh, that's definitely a tough one, because you're right. There's so many opportunities right now, right? You would think everything is an opportunity, and I mean, all of us, we see so many things going on. We feel like, oh, I could have done that. We could have done that. But I've come out with some. I love acronyms. By the way, I love acronyms. I put it for myself and for my team and for everyone, because it's a good messaging way of a good way to message something, and also to kind of keep it memorable in a way. So I call it a map. How do you map an opportunity is by using an acronym called MAP, MAP.
MAP.
And
Ah, nice.
MAP.
Hmm.
Uh, it's a made up one, but I think it works for me at least, which is M is for the market, right? It has to be a good big market. Otherwise, great people working on a small market is not a great outcome all the time. So if you
Mm,
have a big market, then you can survive. Like mobility was a big market, right? You could do things in there.
right.
So the market, and then A is for your ability. I mean, market could be big, but I have no knowledge about it, then it's not going to be a great one.
So
So I
knowledge,
think
knowledge in problem space, industry, domain. What kind of knowledge or technique,
your
technology?
ability to know about that market, your own ability is what I mean. Ability to understand that market better.
Yeah, but
And
ability is something that you can acquire. No, you spend an year or 6 months and understand what the issue
that
is.
is that is true. That is true. But as I said, personally, I feel like I love blockchain and cryptocurrency. I don't have much knowledge around it. So
Got it.
yes, we will build it, but my initial idea would not be on crypto only because my was not crypto only. Now, in the hindsight, you might say, well, why not? You could have spent 1 year to do that.
Yeah,
But once you have that ability, then it is a part of it. So I think the best way to think about that is then you build that ability first
got it.
rather than saying that I want to jump into it, right?
Got it.
So if it is crypto, you would learn about crypto better and then take that as an initiative. And P
Got
is for the passion part, which is I think is very important because startups go through a lot of ups and downs, and the only way that you can survive and have other people see a smile on your face, even though you are kind of burnt inside,
right.
is with the passion that you have. So I use MAP as my mapping the opportunity theory.
Right. So did you have multiple ideas, by the way?
I
And
had
then
tons of ideas.
you
Everyone does, I think so. I had tons of ideas. Yes.
and how did you zero in on this? How did map fit into? How did Weaver in fit into this map?
How? Okay. So as I said, knowledge, has I've always been fascinated by this knowledge thing. How you get the knowledge with the right people at the right time, right? So knowledge network was always in my mind in ad hoc fashion. I built it as groups, meetup groups earlier that we do, and then with Weavr, we are now trying to build that as a complete knowledge network and a knowledge sharing platform. And the idea was very simple. Everyone has, there's a lot of untapped knowledge, which is not not coming to life because there is no way to do that, right? For example, the number of DMs that I get, and I'm sure you are getting for help, are amazing, right? They don't. I mean, I can always say that I'm open here, I'm willing to help, but managing those DMs, disaggregation, this is a challenge. So what we want to do is,
Even if you want to help, because
yes,
there is so much friction
that's right.
and there is so much time involved in managing it,
Yeah,
you can't do it even if your intent is there.
yeah,
So I learned this from Rajesh, to block some time to help.
yeah,
So there are people, like, I'm into product space, I'm a product manager, so there are a lot of people who approach me when they want to get into product management. How can they do this, and usually you want to help. So what I do is I block that. It just makes me feel better that I want to block on a weekend 2 hours just replying to people and helping them and making connection. That makes me feel good. And you are trying to solve it by orchestrating it and making a.
absolutely. As a matter of fact, because you mentioned about that, I have another acronym that we use for our company, which is called EIR, right? So make it easy, uh, impactful, because when you share knowledge, you are actually making an impact, and
Right.
when you send a proceed to a charity, you're making a bigger impact onto that, and
Mm.
make it rewarding, right? So EIR is our the way to look at our platform is that we want to create this super easy, positively impactful, and meaningfully rewarding, right, for everyone who comes onto this. And the reason that we think it's a huge market is because if you think about, as I said, around you, so many people have so much wisdom, right? But it's just that the way, there is no easy way to really for them to share their knowledge in a way that works for them.
Right.
And everyone is in a different stage of their life. Some people would want it for thought leadership, some people would want it for giving back, some people would want it for pure money. So we want to give it open, keep it open. There is no right or wrong here, it's just the way the person wants it to be. So that's the platform that we are building. And
So you said EIR, right? So easy. What was I for?
I is for impactful, right?
Impact.
I can share my knowledge, but if it is not impacting anyone in a positive way, it's just I won't feel that great about doing it every single month or every single week, right? So I
Got it.
should have an impact onto something that, with my knowledge that I've gained, I share. So we think mentors and experts also should think that way. That not only did I share my knowledge, first of all, I helped somebody,
Right.
and I had the opportunity to even support a cause here with
Right.
that.
And R was rewarding.
R is rewards. Like you should have meaningful rewards based on that, whatever your stage in life is, whether it's money, thought leadership,
Got it.
building followerships, things like those.
Got it.
So
So
we
okay.
are keeping our platform's base as saying, well, we want to make it easy, impactful, and rewarding. That's what we
Got
want
it.
to do.
So I still want to get into the problem space. So for you to concretely zero down on the right problem, only then there is a problem solution fit, isn't it? Um, so how did you concretize this? How did you validate whether this problem is to be solved, or did you want to take a bet on it, come up with an MVP, and then see and test whether this is the right problem to solve? How when did you become sure of this problem?
No, I think there was a little bit of a conviction this time that there is a problem here. But then, obviously, market tells you.
Yeah.
So what we started doing was we started talking to the initial uh, folks that I knew who had invested or who benefited from Weavr, from HelloSys earlier to start with, because they are accomplished people who can give you a very candid advice, not like mince words onto this. And they are also the ones who said we would love to do something like this. And when I started expanding this discussion with the people who I didn't know very, I would say very closely, the similar kind of a notion came in. And as I said, when you genuinely ask somebody that would you like to mentor, it's not that they don't want to mentor. It's about, do I have the time? Why should
Bandwidth.
I, right?
Yeah.
And what is it like? How do I now carve out my time? So
Right.
we had to address those questions rather than whether there is a need or not.
Right. Right. So but this was in the consumer space then, right? So this is not enterprise in any way, am I
Yeah.
right?
So we started. Oh, that's a very good point. We were with a complete knowledge graph and machine learning engine for the tech industry that will
Mm.
give knowledge and insights for the problems that people are facing, the developers are facing. So it was absolutely focused initially. So we started Weavr as a product which would give you insights for any company that has technical audience as their customers or developers as their customers
Right.
or influencers. So that's how we started. We built a knowledge graph that would get data. We have 75 million plus data sets that come from all the tech channels that you can think of, and exposes that into deep insights, saying these are the major problems. They can understand the trends. They can look at their footprint versus another company's footprint. That was our first start.
Could
And
you, could
now,
you sim- could you simplify it a bit? What does knowledge graph mean? And so could you give me help us understand this in a use case? Say there is a company, all right, and their customers are developers. Okay, say maybe a random example. And then what happens? Why would they buy your product?
so Weaver Insights is why would they buy is because today there is no way to, I mean, the biggest way to engage technical audiences to support them and to answer in the right places at the right time. Right?
Right.
That's what we did. I have done it for HelloSys. I've done it for, and that is not easy because it's a very, very time consuming, hard thing to do. Right?
Right.
So what we do is we surface out questions that are coming in from people all across the world so that
Mm.
people can then chime into those conversations in a very easy way by involving their team in there.
Right.
So they are putting the best foot forward. By virtue of getting all this data, we are able to show some trends by saying the footprint is increasing. And so now a lot of companies are doing hackathons,
Right.
I would say events. But how do you really see whether your conversation is growing,
Mm.
how your footprint is increasing versus what is happening with that, right? So some data will come from your marketing channels, marketing automation systems,
Right.
but nobody looks at GitHub, Stack Overflow, Hacker News, things
Right.
like those. So we show that as a part of the insights as well. So it's a
Got
support as well as insights that come from that data that we get.
it. Got it.
And what we are doing now with Weavr Cafes, we are opening up that content, which is well categorized, well labeled as a knowledge platform, while bringing in experts as well for that particular area. So, for
Got
example, let's take multi-cloud, right, or hybrid cloud as a technology.
Yeah.
The knowledge graph then picks up everything that is around hybrid cloud. For example, there's something called service mesh that will be also picked up because the system understands that we have hybrid clouds related to that.
Right.
And so Weavr Cafe is now going to be open with all this news and content that is out there for that particular industry or technology, along with the experts and mentors on top of it, who can then talk about it.
Lovely. So how long has this product been now?
It's been 18 months now in Weavr Insights, and Weavr Cafe is being launched in mid-August.
Nice. And what stage would you say in this 18 months? What stage is it now? So you have not launched it yet. Is that right?
The cafe part, the platform part is being launched now.
Okay.
Insights has been in production. A lot of companies are using it
Got it.
on the product. Yeah.
Got it. So I also forgot to ask you about. So you're a co-founder, right? So did you have? First of all, I never got to ask the if you had co-founders in your previous organization as well,
I
and
did.
how did you find them, and have they continued? Is this the new venture also with the same founders, or how is it?
The new venture is not with the same founders, but we have a stellar founder here. Her name is Onzi, and as I said, I go by references to start with, but I personally am, I would say, completely focused on talent and the passion alignment on
Hmm.
this. And so I have gone through references all the time when it comes to founders. So the
Reference.
previous reference, or I've worked with them earlier.
Got it.
Yes.
So how important it is to find a co-founder who is aligned with you and who I do not know the core values should match. Or what are some of your rules of thumb to have a right co-founder for you to be to enjoy or maybe succeed?
I think that's probably one of the most important things that one has to focus on. I think you have a lot of troubles already in a startup. That is
Hmm.
the last thing that you want, that your co-founder is not aligned with you. And yes, there are going to be some sort of disagreements all the time. It's okay. But I feel like this is probably the most important thing. And no wonder everyone who wants to ask you, where did you find the co-founder,
Right.
is a very important question. So for me, alignment into many ways, not just on the product level, on a chemistry level, has to be important,
Right.
as well as kind of some sort of a complementary skill. It's
Right.
very important to kind of, because it's a very small team, so you have to wear multiple hats, and
Right.
so you can do multiple hats on that.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's an extremely important uh, thing to really look at. Finding
Um,
co-
but again, that's also a lot of luck, right? So you might not find it. You might not. You might have great friends, but they don't fit into, like, they might not have the skills that you're looking for. You cannot just call your school friend who
Yeah,
might have some skills, but it needs a lot of things to come together to make it work, right?
that
If
is
you do not get it, if you don't get a fit, what do you do? I mean, how do you fish? How did you get your co-founder for Weaver?
I was looking for someone who I could find from a data science kind of, there has a knowledge in data side, and I was fishing around with my network saying, do you know anyone in
Right.
there? So one of my cousins worked with my co-founder, current co-founder, and so we met a number of times, discussed on this. We realized that there is definitely a not just a talent alignment here, there is a lot of other alignments that happen. So we went on long trips, talking to each other, and finally decided to make that happen.
And what are his skills? Like, you are a techie, right? So is he
I
from?
come from a tech background, but I think currently I'm more yapping than I would say doing teching.
Okay.
So Onzi, our co-founder, is actually a deep down data scientist by training,
I
but
see.
then she has also, you know, knowledge of everything else that you can front end to back end. So she is definitely out there in the tech world. So I leave it to her.
Got it. My wife is not there at home. She would have picked me for saying he without knowing the gender.
Yeah, no,
She's
that's okay. That's
she's a,
cool.
she's a diversity consultant, and she would kill me if I assume the gender and would say he's a
He,
masculine gender. So that is something that I am trying to. Even if I'm married with her for like 8 years now, I'm still back of the mind. I go back to these biases. But yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Excellent. So these are fantastic. I just wanted to. I mean, I'm also being aware of your time here. Some important questions. We all talked about the rosy side of things. How did things grow when you had a 5 million exit? Weavr.ai is going smooth. It's all smooth sailing, but entrepreneurship is not that smooth sailing.
understands. Yeah.
There is a lot of psychological price that you pay for navigating this uncertain territory. So why don't you share a bit about that? So what has been your biggest challenges in your entrepreneurial journey? Maybe first with your first venture, and then the second one. And what are your ways to manage the stress and the psychological pressure of being an entrepreneur? And then third one is, once you have had a good exit in your first venture, does your second venture you can take it easy a bit, because you know what, I'm already successful, second one I can take it easy, if it works, does not work? Or how do you bring in the same rigor to make it work? Sorry, I asked you
Yeah.
a
No,
lot
but
of.
I tell you what, I think while there are a lot of benefits of going through an experience of building and selling, I kind of give the analogy of shaving, right? Howsoever you could be doing shaving every day, but every time you shave in the morning, you got to watch for cuts, right? So it's like that. That yes, it becomes a little easier because some stuff, have some clarity in there, and you are not being jolted with this competitor coming out or that happening. You're not kind of reactive because this is what you're going to make it happen by hook or crook, right? There's some level of internal confidence that doesn't matter if you don't support me. So I go by the theory of saying, today you will ignore me, tomorrow you will start noticing me, and then later you will join me, right? So I think that has now ingrained in it, but otherwise it's always startups are always hard. But yeah, you are right, it's not easy. It's the I think the worst thing that I feel in entrepreneurship is that you cannot work on your hobbies as much as you want to, right?
Mm,
Things that you also like other than work, right? You have to really cut down. At least I had to cut down on just by saying, oh god, I got to finish this rather than doing that. And everyone has a lot of hobbies. So do I love cartooning, I love bunch of things that are outdoor, but it's that you cannot do that uh, while you are doing all the startup in there. And I'm sure that at given time you will then change and then say, okay, you have full structure around it.
right.
Yeah.
No, so what were your biggest challenges?
Oh, biggest.
What were your darkest days?
Oh, the darkest days. The darkest days, there are too many to count, but I'll first tell you how you come out of this. How I came out of this is purely uh, nobody else can help you. I think that's where I feel. I mean, people will help you, but it's first your own grit that you have to think of and say that I can do it. I can move out of this, and then you start seeking the right help. And but if you start losing your brain, mind onto this, and it's all gone. That's a big challenge. So I have had many during the days of Helosys. I had a severe accident, and in a small team, when one person goes off, especially who was client facing, the company gets south. So I was out of commission for 2.5, 3 months almost at some point, and we were going totally south to a point that we would have been, shut down.
Right.
And thanks to my team, and we came back, the whole team, coming back into it and saying, okay, now let's bring it back. Very, very difficult. So out of cash, out of customers shouting at us that it's not being covered well, and no process. It was like on one person to really handle the clients. So those were some dark days that I still remember. But how we came back again, brought it back up, and then finally had a decent exit. Even though we could have added a few zeros, but hey, we were bootstrapped, so it was not bad.
You said grit, right? So when there are the dark days where things go, nothing seems to work, your customer is shouting, yelling at you, maybe your product is failing, or you lose a crucial employee, or something of that sort. So what are the ways to go through that, and run through that tide?
Yeah, I have now. Uh, I've kind of set up some level of I would say process in my mind to not have these situations come in. And
Hmm.
again, I'm big on acronyms, so I have another one called EPIC, which is which I call which I actually diligently use in my calendar now. And so you can
Epic.
avoid Epic. Yeah, to build an Epic company, you got to have an Epic calendaring system in a way. Or but it's Epic is a fantastic way for me to divide my time box it, so that I don't really face these situations that would come as a knee jerk reaction for me. And E is for, so what I do is I kind of block some time away for E, P, I, and C. E is for employees and equity holders, right? You got to think for them a little bit. In our daily life, you don't really think all the time that, hey, you know what, can I do something for this person? How he or she is feeling? Can I help? So I actually put that time, E as in, and then P is for product and its promotion, I is for investment, and C is for customers. So some of these things could be covered by planning better, I would say, because if you don't think of the employees, you will get a surprise one day, which is not a great way to look at. But yeah, having said that, a lot of these things are going to come to you, and that's when I said, when you in a startup, you see one day is like you are totally pumped up, and the other day you feel like, oh gosh, nothing's working. I mean, we thought this is going to be a big one, and
Right.
nobody's liking it. So the only way is to really tell yourself that there has to be a better way to get this. But if you don't train your mind to have that grit to say, okay, nothing's going to just go tumble down,
Right.
that is where I'm talking about the grit part for the big things that could happen wrong otherwise.
Right. So I've not been a full-fledged entrepreneur, but I have sold programs. I've run, where
Yeah, you've
people.
been doing great, by the way. I have to say that I saw your channel and was pleasantly surprised.
Yes. So it was a paid channel, and then I had a few numbers. So me and my friend, we were running Limitless, and I knew every week we had to get a few paid subscribers, but then there were weeks nobody would sign up, and then you just give up. So if you scale this up on a bigger context and running a business, when you're not getting new customers which you had wanted, maybe you got lucky with your first five, and then you thought, oh, let's extrapolate this, but it's not happening, it's not scaling to the next level. Then you lose your mind, right? And then at what point you feel that, this is not working, I should give up, and at what point you should say that, so that means an entrepreneur has to be really really strong with his mind, and then no give up attitude. Is that fair to say?
I didn't mean that you don't change your idea, because that changes, right? You see where the opportunity is. I'm talking about the bigger challenges that sometimes they bring you down, and once you're down, you can't be thinking creatively, right? What I mean is that you are thinking it's not working, nobody's liking it, and then you start beating yourself a bit. And I
Yes.
think at that point, you can think of a new great idea that, okay, let me just take this out. I'll go this marketing campaign here.
Right.
That doesn't really fill in together. So there's a little bit of a ditch where you have to come out of it. And
Hmm.
that can only happen when you yourself are thinking. So I take long walks, or, ride a bike to kind of think through a little. Helps a little bit when you are thinking for that. And you come back and you say, okay, let's go back. Let's do
Right.
that.
So there are two, it's a thin line, right? So one is, there is self delusion, where you, even though your business model is failing, you delude yourself because you are so much, because you are this,
Let's get into it. Yeah.
yeah, you are this CEO founder material. You are so positive but you're self deluding. And the other one is being realistic and objective on how things are, whether this will work or not.
Yeah.
And I think there's a thin line between these two extremes, isn't it?
Absolutely a thin line. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's dependent on what stage you are in. You make a call based on that. And but I think it's a very, very important one, because if you keep on working on something that is not making a huge impact, right, and it's not meaningfully rewarding.
Right.
Again, everyone has a meaningful rewarding as a different scale. What moves your needle could be something else for somebody else that moves their needle.
Right.
So I would say uh, one has to objectively think about it, that this is working or not, and
Right.
then make the necessary moves. If not completely pivoting, sometimes the changing the audience, changing the customer segment, who
Right.
you sell to, could change. But then to get to that, you have to kind of bring yourself back up, because every change is hard on you, right?
Got it. My question to you, as a serial entrepreneur, is can success be replicated with every upcoming venture that you have? Can you repeatedly succeed?
I don't have an answer. I haven't, I don't call myself a serial entrepreneur. I think I'm taking it as it comes right now. Success will depend on once we really make it big.
Right.
But I think you learn a lot from the previous ones. If it gets into your head, then there is a chance that you might not. But
Right.
otherwise, there is a little bit of a pattern that you can follow,
Right.
and it might not be a huge success.
Right.
It might not be $1 billion success, but it could still be a success when you do the next time, because I think there's a lot that you learn that you don't want to do.
Got it.
Don't want to do is extremely important, and that's why I think a lot of times VCs fund the ones that have done a company, because you've gone through the entire cycle. You
Right.
won't spend your time. You won't make the same mistakes again
Got it.
in the new one.
Got it. So you mitigate your failures because you have learned through experience, isn't
I
it?
think, yeah, and you also realize that what, as I said, there are only two ways to look at it. Right? You mitigate some failures, the risks that you have, and you increase the chance of your serendipity by doing certain things. Right, so you
Got it.
increase both sides of it.
But is it easier, as a with the level of stress and uncertainty? Is it easier to build your second venture when you have already succeeded with your first, in terms of mindset? I mean, or I mean,
I think
yeah,
there is a lot of conviction that comes in after you do first, right? Not easier. I wouldn't call it easier, but I think there's a lot of conviction in your mind that, yeah, I mean, by hook or crook. And then also there's a little bit of, I would say, good arrogance that comes with that, right? Good arrogance is what I call it, that you don't have to then get a buy-in from everyone. You are not like get feeling rejected
got
with
it.
every meeting, that you kind of are a little hardened to a certain level and say, okay, you don't like it, that's your call, but I'm going this direction. And still be open to feedback, I would say. I think that's an important one. I'm not saying that you have to be close minded, but having that little bit of a conviction in your mind definitely helps.
Got
And
it.
you can build it with your team as well, right? Your team also knows that we are going to get somewhere.
Got it. I just want to bring that point back to the mentorship. I've spoken to some close friends who have run their own companies, startups, and you know what? One thing they all tell me about mentorship is it gets irritating because there is a lot of unsolicited advice that comes their way, and it is not meant with any sincerity, but and then when they are new, they take all this feedback, but then over time they realize that all of this was BS, and it did not help them. Is the Do you see any truth in that?
I think the difference between mentorship and coaching is that probably at times that what I would say. For me, when I'm seeking help from my mentors and people, I have a very specific question. So every bit of their advice helps. Whether I'm going to implement that or not, I get a viewpoint from somebody who has been there, done that, right?
Right.
If somebody is trying to coach me, coaching is like they are thinking about me. They might not know my exact scenario, my context. So they will come out with their coaching mindset. And that's why I think the difference between this coaching and mentoring is big, right? Especially for founders, because you have so much going on and coaches might not have the context for that. They will give you a coaching advice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? While I'm going here with my absolute problem that I have, that this is what I want to do. I want to build a partnership or an alliance with these kind of companies. How do I approach it? Right. So, what are the ideas? So, it's a very specific question that a mentor can then focus and ask the right questions to say, okay, maybe you can do that. And then, yes, absolutely. You have to take everything in and then decide what's the best.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions to end here. I just want to know what do you consider your strengths that makes you a successful entrepreneur? What are your strengths?
Um, I think empathy is I've been told, I don't want to use it as a buzzword, but I've been told that I think about people around me, with my team, with for customers. So it helps build relationships. So I kind of feel good about it, and customers become friends, and then they become references, and they become your mentors. So it's a whole cycle that I think has been one of my biggest strengths. I'm big on product side. I kind of think solutions, so I feel good about that. And there's a lot more to learn on other fronts that I should be doing better.
I also see that you're very curious. Also, I notice, I observe your activities on Twitter. The other day, you asked a question to Sharath when he.
Yeah, I keep learning. Just like everyone else, I believe that I'm porous. I keep learning. So
so no amount of success behind you can guarantee the success in the future, right? So because technology, the world
everything is changing.
is
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and
you
as a matter
cannot.
of fact, it's also how big you want to make it this time, right? Kind of a thing. It's
Right.
not like, okay, you can do a similar thing and then you'll be happy. I won't be, right? So
Got it. And what are not your strengths, maybe, and how do you compensate for that?
I think operations is still not my biggest strength. Howsoever I try to, be very operationally efficient, I think I'm not. I have a bunch of work to do on that. Another thing that I feel I've been told is that, and I think it happens to many founders, but is that it's the balance of not letting uh, your idea out of your mind, even when you are out somewhere, doing something. Like it never leaves you, even if you're on a vacation, right? It takes a lot of, I would say, power to disconnect yourself, and that is, I'm not doing that great. I think I should do that better. And why it is important is because if you don't disconnect, you don't really get to new things which could be beneficial in many ways. So sometimes I have to tell myself and say, you know get out of it. And
Got it.
I don't say it positively, because even though it might sound like, okay, oh, it's a positive thing, it's actually is an absolutely wrong thing to do. And I don't want to do it. I don't want my team to be in that mode as well.
Right.
uh,
So, as a founder, CEO, there are so many things that your mind is getting into, right? So you have to manage a lot of things, a lot of disciplines. There's chaos, there's distractions, there is there's the shiny object syndrome, and all of that. How do you manage all of that? How do you prioritize things? Like, what are your personal disciplines to manage your day or the week? Maybe do you have any
I have
guidelines?
I have a lot to learn on that as well, but I I've made a commitment, and I feel like that for everyone involved with Weavr, the journey has to be as beautiful as well, not just the destination, right? That's a mantra that we want to live by,
Right.
and as much as we can make, right? Obviously, it's a startup has many things, but if we live by that mantra, then we don't want to make life hard for everyone. Like every day, every single there are going to be bouts of intense activities, and then you do. So I feel like that's a good way to then structure and say, okay, let's have as much fun as you do it. And that is how I try to take it. Also relieves a lot of stress, and you kind of build relationships and things like those. So I feel like if you have that mantra, at least in our company, your actions then are more geared towards saying, okay, how can we make it better for everyone, right?
Right.
Yes, there's going to be a lot of work, but can we have a lot of work hard, play hard kind of a mode here? So we do that in
Absolutely.
our team quite a bit.
And then the wins will be bonus, so you're enjoying the journey.
Yeah, enjoying. And one another thing that you can make it beautiful is by really celebrating very small successes, right?
That's
And not just on a professional level, but a personal level, right?
right.
We do what we call, instead of build in public, we say grow in team, kind of a thing, where we kind of
Oh,
share our,
instead of build in public, what do you do?
we say grow in team, so we kind of share our uh, one personal and one professional thing that will move the needle, and within the team, right? It's not a pressure technique, but it's more of a little bit of accountability comes to it, right? Otherwise, you have a professional and a personal motivation, which nobody knows, and then suddenly you realize, oh, I thought about it 2 years back, but never did that. But once we know, and we just keep asking, hey, how's that thing going? Are you learning on that? How about your tennis practice, right? So things like those that one can ask, and that way we keep ourselves sane. And if somebody says, well, I actually did that, I went into a tournament, I did this, so we celebrate those successes. It's
Nice,
a good
nice.
way to celebrate small successes in there.
But why did you compare it with build in public?
Because I think a lot of times, like building in public is obviously in vogue right now, but
Yeah,
a lot of times you don't talk about what you have as a think about. First of all, think this is the next professional and the personal goal, which will move the needle. You might have that, but you don't share it with anyone, right?
right.
That is in my mind, and as a team we want to share it with each other,
That's
and that way then other
empowering. Yeah.
folks can help you if they have some ability to help in that, they can talk about it. And once you talk about it, then the new conversations open up. And
Yeah.
then if you achieve something small towards that direction, then you celebrate that. So it's a lot of things that can come out of this.
No, this is beautiful because in traditional organizations, people always have their side projects, but they hide it. They never share it.
That's right.
Even though they derive a lot of satisfaction from their side projects, they never tell it. Nobody
Yeah,
knows. In fact, you're punished if you're doing
yeah.
it.
And it's completely opposite, because a lot of these things actually make you happy, right? So
Exactly, make you happy. Doing a podcast makes me happy. Having
yeah,
conversations outside of my day job makes me happy. But I can't talk openly in my full time job. So
yeah.
great. Last question is: what are your goals for your immediate goals, so in the next year or 3 years, and then maybe some of your long term goals?
Well, for us, we want to make it this as a leading knowledge sharing platform, and we want to empower thousands and thousands of people who have not been able to share their knowledge because of time, or they didn't really have the easy platform to do it. And on the other side, that will benefit a number of things. So we want to become the largest platform in that industry, where people can share their knowledge and support a cause if they want to by doing that. So you're killing two birds with one stone, which I think is I would love to do as well. So
Got it.
that's our top goal, and we are going towards that, working towards it.
Nice. And just to ask you, these acronyms, do you pick these acronyms, or do you make your own acronyms because it's going to be a hit? Whoever is
I just
listening.
make them. My team laughs at me. My friends laugh at me, but I like it. That's
No,
I'm an
great.
acronym lover. That I message myself through an acronym.
No, we should make it popular and viral. Maybe create some Twitter threads around it. So
It's just easy to remember, right? On this.
all right. Well, this brings us to the end of a fascinating interview with Avinash. Avinash, I can tell you one. This is one of my most. I enjoyed this conversation more than the other conversations. Uh, are sometimes are little stiff, but I do not know. Maybe since we have known each other for a year or so, that's why it felt a
Definitely.
little more normal to me. But I thoroughly enjoyed. You would have observed that I became very very curious on a few little things that I often want to ask below the surface stories, because usually when you do an exit or something of that sort, it's always on the press, but people do
Mm,
not know behind the scenes stories, which are more inspirational. There's more to learn from behind the scenes
I
stories.
agree.
Thanks for sharing that, Avinash, and I wish you all the best for everything that you're doing, and all the best for Weavr.ai. If people would want to reach out to you, what is the best way to reach out to you, Avinash?
It's actually Avi. I go by Avi at Weavr.ai.
Excellent. With that, thanks a lot, Avinash, and hope to see you soon again.
Thank you, Ravi, and you're doing a wonderful job. So keep sharing some more knowledge.
Thank you.